Oh boy, redactions are so much fun, aren't they? And we have seen some redactions in these AI cases, but nothing like this. This one is actually making nostalgic for the Obama years. You'll see what I'm talking about. But first of all, this is Andersen v. Stability AI, but Midjourney is one of the defendants, and this one is about Midjourney. And plaintiffs are after Midjourney's source code. Apparently because they want to probe the model architecture for that claim about how they're emulating the style of different artists. But there's a lot that's been redacted, and so I should put in a disclaimer that those redacted portions might explain a lot of what I'm complaining about here and might add additional light and context to it. But I don't know, I can only go with what I'm given. So we'll see what's going on with those redactions, but try to read around them. They say, plaintiffs write in response to defendant Midjourney's letter explaining its bases for its refusal to produce source code underlying its redacted stuff. The source code underlying its what? We don't know. But what kind of source code could they have that the plaintiffs think is going to be enlightening? So really, we've got a few things to read on the second page here, and spoiler alert, this is going to be it. This is going to be a lot more talking than reading. But their claim is, source code is undoubtedly the ground truth in how any model, or in this case a model's filters, function. Plaintiffs should be permitted to inspect the source code, the source of truth, firsthand. Source code is well known to be the ground truth of what a particular program, application, filter, or other software does. But the thing is, that's not really the case with an AI model. It's the weights that tell you everything. We'll get into that, but first let's take a look at the rest of this letter. Oh, look, a bunch of black rectangles. Oh, look, more black rectangles. Hey, even more black rectangles. Still more black rectangles. That's the rest of the letter. You remember back in the Obama years, President Barack Obama, the most transparent administration in history, and people would make a FOIA request to get these documents from the Obama administration, and they'd basically come back as black rectangles. That's the situation we're in right here. But what we're talking about here ultimately, and the point they're trying to get with all of this, is about Midjourney imitating the style of an artist. But as we've talked about, styles cannot be copyrighted. You cannot own a style. It's perfectly fine for an artist to, make a piece of artwork in the style of Sarah Andersen. Copyright protection doesn't give you that. But, if you go back to previous filings, they say things like, Midjourney also created style reference models that capture and mimic the distinct style of 4,700 individual artists by name. The source code for both overfit filtering and style mimicry is primary evidence of how Midjourney's models regularly infringe and how its use of plaintiffs' works were anything but fair. It's not fair use because they imitate a style, even though style cannot be copyrighted. But really, the main problem here is we're talking about AI models. And for a modern AI model, source code is not the same thing as how the program actually behaves. The source code is just the algorithm that lets the model run. The actual model itself is all of these weights. And those weights are billions upon billions of floating point numbers that all point at each other. And they are what encode the model's actual behavior. So, if it's a conventional program, source code isn't exactly ground truth because there are some other things that can participate, but it's close. So if you got a spreadsheet and there's this really complicated function and you want to know how that function calculates what it does, the source code will tell you that. If you've got a game and there's a weird control or combination of controls and it has an effect and you want to know why, looking at the source code could probably let you know, or at least give you a strong hint. But when it comes to AIs, those answers are going to be in the weights. And in this case, Midjourney is a diffusion model, and the source code isn't going to give you any real ground truth. What the source code will tell you is the architecture, how the images and text are encoded and tokenized, how the prompts are processed, the inference logic, and how the safety systems and guardrails work. The source code will not tell you why and how a model learned a particular style, why a model associates an artist's name with a style, or whether it can reproduce aspects of an artist's work. All of that is in billions upon billions of numerical weights that it learned during training. So looking at an LLM source code doesn't tell you whether it learned Shakespeare or if it can write a Shakespearean sonnet. It won't tell you why it associates Van Gogh with certain images it produces. It won't even tell you what it means to be a particular style. And that's going to be a big problem for them. Lawyers like this phrase, source code is the ground truth, because source code is an authoritative record of what the developers intentionally built. Source code represents intent. And intent is an element of so many infractions. You've heard me use the word scienter many times. That's what it goes to. How much of this did they intend with Midjourney being able to imitate an artist's style? And Midjourney says it doesn't matter, you can't copyright a style anyway, so what are we even talking about this for? But in a previous filing, the plaintiffs had said that Midjourney used plaintiffs' and class members' copyrights to train an AI model specifically designed to mimic those artists' styles is central evidence to rebutting Midjourney's supposed fair use of plaintiffs' copyrights, even though you can't copyright a style. And Midjourney's success in isolating artistic styles as unique model vectors is central evidence to plaintiffs' trade dress claims, wherein plaintiffs must show their artwork is inherently distinctive. But when you're talking about a machine learning system, most of these aspects that they're asking for, like whether it mimics those artists' styles or the unique model vectors, that's all hidden in the weights somewhere. So good luck going through those and seeing if you can figure that out. All of which means that looking at the source code for the answers can only be misleading, because it doesn't give you those answers. And that's the lesson. If we're being really generous here, they simply won't get what they want. But if we assume the worst, it means they want to be misleading, and they want to grab through all of this source code and the related documentation to just grab any little bits and passages out of context and just quote mine whatever they want to make whatever inferences they can. That's a very common dirty lawyer's trick, unfortunately. If you know my videos where I've talked about creationists and all that quote mining, it's at that same level. And they'll do it. So plaintiff's theory is that Midjourney learned and reproduces artistic styles. The code for a diffusion model, though, might only be a few 100,000 lines or less. So the learned behavior is emergent from the weights that are the result of the training. And those weights are just many billions of floating point numbers. Even if the weights are produced in discovery, explaining them to a judge or jury is going to be difficult, especially considering that even the experts don't really understand their own models. Just look at how much Anthropic has had to do to understand the behavior of Claude. So if someone claimed that they could determine whether Midjourney unlawfully learned an artist's style merely by reading the source code, well, hard doubt. And again, especially since this isn't something you can copyright in the first place. Seriously, I don't even know why the judge is allowing it. And granted, there's all that redacted stuff, who knows what's in there. But I can't really imagine how it's going to cover that major deficit. So when I try to examine this in the light most favorable to the plaintiffs, then I find out that plaintiffs want to show that artistic styles are encoded and intentionally operationalized within Midjourney. They want evidence that this is not merely an emergent property of a giant neural network. The source code may help establish deliberate engineering choices around style reproduction, and those facts could support their Lanham Act and trade dress theories, even if the pure copyright theory remains difficult. But even at that, there are a lot of problems. Midjourney is still fundamentally take prompt, encode text, run the diffusion model, and output the image. And even if the model is really good at generating images in the style of Rutkowski or Andersen, the reason why it can do that is still going to be buried deep in those weights. And the code would tell you very little about how the style knowledge is actually represented and used. And this Lanham Act thing, this is just their excuse. Oh, we violated the Lanham Act. We're not claiming copyright of a style. We're saying Lanham Act. No. It's an excuse and everybody knows it. Nobody thinks that Sarah Andersen made the image. Nobody thinks that she endorsed Midjourney. Nobody thinks that her name in the prompt is anything but descriptive. In the style of Sarah Andersen, when you type that in, that's just common language that artists use all the time. Oh, let's make an image in the style of so-and-so. It has never been a problem before, ever. And also, according to the Supreme Court in Dastar v. 20th Century Fox, you're not supposed to use the Lanham Act as a backdoor copyright law, which is exactly what they're doing here. So boiling it all down, trying to figure out Midjourney's behavior by reading the source code instead of looking at the weights is like looking for the quarter in a place other than where you lost it because the light's better. It's simply dumb when you're looking for a quarter. It's reprehensible when you do it in legal action. But they're anti-AI plaintiffs. We're used to that kind of behavior from them. And who knows, maybe there's a whole other dimension to this in the redacted stuff. I kinda doubt it and can't really think of what it would be. But who knows, if we find out what it is, I'll keep you posted. So please, comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And of course, donate.pagosity.tv keeps me doing this as much as I do it. You want to do more? I need to be making more. Because this isn't my main source of income. You want me to do more videos? It needs to be a bigger source. And that's a great way to do it. The best way, of course, is with regular support through Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. So please check all of that out. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.